The morning sun cast long shadows across the Naval Special Warfare Training Facility in Coronado, California. Sarah Martinez adjusted her gear one final time, checking every strap and buckle with the precision that had become second nature after 18 months of grueling preparation. At 24, she stood among 30 other candidates, but she was the only woman in this particular training cycle for the Navy's most elite fighting force. Sarah's journey to this moment had begun in the dusty streets of El Paso, Texas, where she grew up in a family that struggled to make ends meet. Her father, Miguel, worked double shifts at a construction company, while her mother, Rosa, cleaned office buildings at night to supplement their income. Despite their financial hardships, both parents had instilled in Sarah a fierce determination and an unwavering belief that she could achieve anything she set her mind to. As a child, Sarah had always been different from other girls her age. While her classmates played with dolls and practiced cheerleading routines, she could be found climbing trees, wrestling with the neighborhood boys, or practicing martial arts moves she had learned from watching movies. Her parents initially worried about her tomboyish nature, but they soon realized that their daughter possessed an extraordinary combination of physical strength, mental toughness, and emotional resilience. In high school, Sarah excelled in multiple sports, breaking several school records in track and field while also earning a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Her academic performance was equally impressive, maintaining a 3.8 GPA while working part-time jobs to help support her family. Teachers and coaches alike recognized her potential, but none could have predicted the path she would ultimately choose. The decision to join the military came during her senior year of high school, when a Navy recruiter visited her school. As the recruiter spoke about serving one's country and pushing beyond personal limits, something inside Sarah clicked. She had always felt called to something greater than herself, but she had never been able to articulate exactly what that was. The military, with its emphasis on honor, courage, and commitment, seemed to offer the purpose she had been seeking. After graduation, Sarah enlisted in the Navy and quickly distinguished herself during basic training. Her natural leadership abilities, combined with her exceptional physical conditioning and unwavering determination, caught the attention of her instructors. When the opportunity arose to apply for special operations training, several senior officers encouraged her to pursue it, despite the fact that women had only recently been allowed to attempt such programs. The path to becoming a Navy SEAL was notoriously difficult, with a failure rate exceeding 90%. The training was designed to break even the strongest and most determined individuals, pushing them far beyond what they believed possible. For Sarah, this represented the ultimate test of everything she had worked toward throughout her life. The first phase of training, known as Basic Underwater Demolition / SEAL Training or BUD/S, was legendary for its intensity. Candidates were subjected to months of physical and mental challenges designed to identify those who possessed the rare combination of attributes necessary to serve in the elite unit. Sleep deprivation, hypothermia, extreme physical exertion, and constant psychological pressure were just some of the tools used to separate the committed from the merely curious. Sarah's early weeks of training were marked by both triumph and struggle. Her physical conditioning was excellent, allowing her to keep pace with the grueling exercise regimens that claimed many of her fellow candidates. Her swimming abilities, honed through years of competitive training in high school, served her well during the aquatic portions of the program. However, she also faced unique challenges that her male counterparts did not encounter. Some instructors seemed determined to prove that women did not belong in their elite ranks. They subjected Sarah to additional scrutiny, looking for any sign of weakness or inability to perform at the required level. Rather than discouraging her, this treatment only strengthened her resolve. She understood that she was not just fighting for her own dreams, but also representing all the women who might follow in her footsteps. The other candidates' reactions to her presence were mixed. Some respected her abilities and treated her as an equal, recognizing that anyone who had made it this far deserved their respect. Others harbored doubts about whether a woman could truly perform at the level required in combat situations. A few openly resented her presence, viewing it as either a publicity stunt or a lowering of standards to accommodate political correctness. Sarah chose to let her performance speak for itself. She arrived early for every training session and was among the last to leave. When others struggled with heavy equipment or challenging exercises, she was quick to offer assistance, regardless of how they had treated her. Her philosophy was simple: earn respect through actions, not words. The physical demands of the training were extraordinary. Days began before dawn with punishing runs along the beach, followed by hours of calisthenics, obstacle courses, and combat training. Afternoons were often spent in the cold Pacific Ocean, where candidates learned essential water survival skills while battling hypothermia and exhaustion. Evenings brought classroom instruction on tactics, weapons, and military history, leaving little time for rest or recovery. One particularly challenging exercise involved carrying heavy telephone poles in teams while navigating obstacle courses and running several miles. The poles weighed several hundred pounds and required perfect coordination and communication among team members to manage effectively. Sarah's team initially struggled with the exercise, as some members seemed reluctant to trust a woman with such a critical responsibility. During one training evolution, Sarah's team was falling behind the others when she made a tactical decision that changed the dynamic entirely. Recognizing that their current approach was not working, she suggested a modification to their carrying technique that would better distribute the weight and allow for more efficient movement. Her teammates were skeptical at first, but as they began to implement her strategy, their performance improved dramatically. By the end of the exercise, Sarah's team had not only caught up with the leaders, but had actually finished first. The success was not lost on her teammates, who began to view her less as a liability and more as a valuable asset. Word of her tactical thinking and leadership abilities spread among the other candidates, earning her a grudging respect from even some of her harshest critics. Commander James Mitchell had been overseeing SEAL training for over a decade when Sarah arrived at the facility. A career military officer with multiple combat deployments, Mitchell had earned his position through years of distinguished service and demonstrated leadership. However, he also carried with him certain traditional views about the role of women in combat that were increasingly at odds with the changing policies of the modern military. Mitchell had served during an era when women were prohibited from serving in direct combat roles, and he had developed strong opinions about the physical and emotional demands of special operations work. In his view, the inclusion of women in SEAL training represented a dangerous experiment that could compromise the effectiveness and safety of his teams. He was not alone in holding these views, as many veteran special operations personnel shared his concerns. When Sarah's training cycle began, Mitchell made his position clear to his staff. While he would follow orders and allow women to attempt the training, he would not compromise standards or make accommodations based on gender. If women were to serve in his unit, they would have to meet exactly the same requirements as their male counterparts, with no exceptions or special considerations. This approach seemed fair on the surface, but it also meant that Sarah faced additional pressure to prove herself worthy. Mitchell watched her performance carefully, looking for any indication that she might not be capable of handling the demands of special operations work. He was particularly concerned about how she might perform under the extreme stress of combat situations, where split-second decisions could mean the difference between life and death for her teammates. As the weeks progressed, Mitchell found himself increasingly impressed by Sarah's performance, though he was reluctant to admit it publicly. Her physical conditioning was undeniably excellent, her tactical thinking was sharp, and her leadership abilities were becoming apparent to anyone who observed her interactions with other candidates. However, he remained convinced that the ultimate test would come when she was placed under maximum stress in a realistic combat scenario. The training facility itself was a sprawling complex designed to replicate virtually any combat environment that SEAL teams might encounter in the field. Mock villages, urban environments, maritime training areas, and wilderness survival zones allowed instructors to create realistic scenarios that tested every aspect of a candidate's preparation. The facility was also equipped with state-of-the-art medical and safety equipment, as the nature of the training meant that injuries were not uncommon. One area of the facility was known as the Kill House, a specially designed building where candidates learned close-quarters combat techniques and room-clearing procedures. This training was among the most dangerous and demanding, as it involved live ammunition exercises in confined spaces where teamwork and precision were absolutely critical. Mistakes in this environment could be fatal, making it one of the most psychologically challenging aspects of the entire program. Sarah's first experience in the Kill House was both exhilarating and terrifying. The scenarios were designed to be as realistic as possible, with pop-up targets, simulated civilians, and complex layouts that required instant decision-making under extreme pressure. She had trained extensively with firearms throughout her military career, but the intensity of close-quarters combat was unlike anything she had previously experienced. Working with a four-person team, Sarah's role was to provide rear security while the team leader and point man cleared each room methodically. Communication was critical, as team members needed to know each other's positions at all times to avoid friendly fire incidents. The slightest mistake or miscommunication could result in injury or failure of the mission scenario. During one particularly complex exercise, Sarah's team was tasked with clearing a multi-story building where hostile targets were mixed among innocent civilians. The scenario required not only tactical proficiency, but also the ability to make split-second ethical decisions under pressure. As the team moved through the building, Sarah demonstrated the quick thinking and steady nerves that had characterized her performance throughout training. When her team leader was temporarily disoriented by a flashbang grenade during the exercise, Sarah immediately stepped up to coordinate the team's movements and ensure the successful completion of the mission. Her calm leadership under pressure impressed the observing instructors, who noted her ability to adapt quickly to changing circumstances while maintaining focus on the objective. However, not all of Sarah's experiences during this phase of training were positive. The constant pressure and scrutiny began to take a psychological toll, as she found herself second-guessing decisions that she would have made instinctively under normal circumstances. The knowledge that her every move was being analyzed and critiqued created a level of self-consciousness that threatened to undermine her natural confidence. The social dynamics among the candidates also presented ongoing challenges. While some had come to accept and respect her presence, others remained skeptical or openly hostile. Comments about her physical capabilities, questions about her motivations, and subtle undermining of her achievements were constant reminders that she was still viewed as an outsider by many of her peers. Despite these challenges, Sarah continued to push forward, drawing strength from her family's support and her own unwavering belief in her mission. Regular phone calls home reminded her of why she had chosen this path and reinforced her determination to succeed. Her parents, while worried about her safety, expressed immense pride in her achievements and encouraged her to continue pursuing her dreams. The training intensified as the candidates progressed through different phases of the program. Water survival exercises became more complex and dangerous, with longer underwater swims and more challenging rescue scenarios. Land-based training incorporated increasingly sophisticated weapons systems and tactical procedures. Academic requirements expanded to include detailed study of foreign languages, cultural awareness, and geopolitical analysis. Sarah's performance remained consistently strong across all areas of training. Her natural athletic ability continued to serve her well in physical challenges, while her intelligence and curiosity made her an excellent student in classroom settings. Perhaps most importantly, her leadership abilities continued to develop as she gained the respect and trust of her fellow candidates. The relationships she built with her teammates became one of the most rewarding aspects of the entire experience. Men who had initially doubted her capabilities came to view her as a trusted colleague and friend. The bonds forged through shared hardship and common purpose transcended any initial prejudices or preconceptions, creating the kind of brotherhood that was essential for effective special operations work. As the training cycle progressed toward its final phases, anticipation and anxiety grew among all the candidates. They had invested months of their lives in pursuing this goal, sacrificing personal relationships and enduring physical and emotional hardship in the pursuit of earning the coveted SEAL Trident. For Sarah, the stakes felt even higher, as she knew that her success or failure would be scrutinized far beyond the immediate training environment. The upcoming advanced combat training would represent the culmination of everything she had learned and a final test of her readiness to serve in one of the military's most elite units. Unknown to Sarah, this phase would also bring her face-to-face with Commander Mitchell in a way that would test not only her tactical abilities, but also her character and resolve in ways she could never have imagined. The advanced combat training phase marked a crucial milestone in the SEAL candidate program, where theoretical knowledge merged with practical application under the most realistic conditions possible. Sarah had spent weeks preparing for this moment, knowing that her performance during these final exercises would largely determine whether she earned the right to wear the SEAL Trident or joined the ranks of those who fell short of the ultimate goal. The morning of the pivotal exercise dawned gray and overcast, with a cold Pacific wind sweeping across the training facility. Sarah arrived early, as had become her habit, to review her equipment and mentally prepare for the challenges ahead. She understood that today's training would be observed not only by the regular instructing staff, but also by several senior officers who were evaluating the overall effectiveness of the program. Commander Mitchell stood before the assembled candidates in the pre-dawn darkness, his weathered face illuminated by the harsh glare of floodlights. His voice carried clearly across the formation as he outlined the day's objectives, emphasizing the critical importance of teamwork, tactical precision, and adaptability under pressure. The exercise would simulate a hostage rescue mission in an urban environment, requiring candidates to demonstrate every skill they had learned throughout their training. The scenario was complex and demanding. A terrorist organization had taken control of a multi-story building and was holding civilians hostage. Intelligence reports indicated multiple armed hostiles, booby traps, and civilians scattered throughout the structure. The candidates would be divided into teams of 6, with each team responsible for clearing designated sections of the building while coordinating with other teams to ensure mission success. Sarah found herself assigned to Team Alpha, led by a seasoned petty officer named Rodriguez, who had impressed instructors throughout the training cycle with his tactical acumen and natural leadership abilities. The team also included Thompson, a former college football player whose physical strength made him invaluable for breaching operations, Williams, a communications specialist with exceptional marksmanship skills, Jackson, a combat medic with extensive field experience, and Chun, demolitions expert who could handle any explosive device they might encounter. The team dynamics had evolved significantly over the months of training together. Initial skepticism about Sarah's capabilities had given way to genuine respect and trust as she consistently demonstrated her value as both a tactical asset and a reliable teammate. Her unique perspective and problem-solving abilities had proven valuable in numerous training scenarios, earning her a permanent place in the team's planning and decision-making processes. As the teams prepared for the exercise, Commander Mitchell moved among them, observing their preparation rituals and offering final guidance. When he reached Team Alpha, his attention focused immediately on Sarah, studying her equipment loadout and tactical positioning within the team formation. His expression remained neutral, but Sarah could sense the intensity of his scrutiny and the unspoken questions behind his calculating gaze. The building chosen for the exercise was a four-story concrete structure that had been specially modified to accommodate various training scenarios. Each floor contained multiple rooms connected by narrow corridors, stairwells, and ventilation systems that could serve as alternative routes for both attackers and defenders. The structure was equipped with sophisticated monitoring equipment that allowed instructors to track every movement and evaluate each team's performance in real time. Team Alpha's assigned objective was to clear the second and third floors while coordinating with other teams to secure the entire building. The mission briefing indicated that hostile forces were well-armed and prepared to fight, with no intention of surrendering or negotiating. Rules of engagement were clear. Protect civilian hostages at all costs, eliminate threats efficiently, and maintain constant communication with command and other teams. The exercise began with a coordinated breach of the building's ground floor, where Team Bravo would establish a secure entry point and command post while the other teams moved to their assigned areas. Sarah's team approached their insertion point through a series of underground tunnels that connected to the building's basement level, requiring them to navigate in complete darkness while maintaining absolute silence. The tunnel system tested every aspect of their training, from basic navigation skills to advanced tactical movement techniques. Team members had to rely entirely on their equipment and each other, communicating through hand signals and subtle touches while moving through cramped spaces that barely allowed for single-file progression. Sarah's position in the formation placed her third in line, responsible for monitoring their rear approach while maintaining contact with the team leader ahead. As they emerged from the tunnel system into the building's basement, the team encountered their first tactical challenge, a simulated booby trap that could have eliminated multiple team members if not properly detected and neutralized. Chen's expertise proved invaluable as he carefully examined the device and determined the safest method for bypassing it without triggering an explosion that would alert hostile forces to their presence. The successful navigation of this initial obstacle boosted the team's confidence and reinforced their trust in each other's specialized skills. However, they also understood that the challenges would only intensify as they moved deeper into the building and closer to areas where hostile forces and civilian hostages were likely to be concentrated. Moving to the second floor required ascending a narrow stairwell that offered limited visibility and multiple opportunities for ambush. Rodriguez carefully planned their approach, assigning specific responsibilities to each team member and establishing clear communication protocols for the ascent. Sarah's role involved providing overwatch from the stairwell, while other team members cleared the landing area and established a secure foothold on the target floor. The second floor layout was a maze of interconnected offices and conference rooms that had been arranged to simulate a typical urban office environment. Intelligence reports suggested that 3 civilian hostages were being held somewhere on this floor, along with an unknown number of hostile guards. The team's mission was to locate and secure the hostages while neutralizing any threats they encountered. The room-clearing process was methodical and precise, with each team member fulfilling their assigned role while maintaining constant awareness of their teammates' positions and status. Sarah's responsibilities included covering designated fields of fire, monitoring for flanking movements, and serving as the team's communications link with other units operating elsewhere in the building. As they progressed through the floor, the team encountered several simulated hostile forces represented by sophisticated training targets that could pop up unexpectedly and required split-second identification and engagement decisions. The scenarios were designed to test not only marksmanship skills, but also the ability to distinguish between legitimate threats and innocent civilians under extreme stress and time pressure. During one particularly challenging room-clearing exercise, Sarah demonstrated the tactical instincts and quick decision-making that had characterized her performance throughout training. As the team entered a large conference room, multiple targets appeared simultaneously, requiring immediate threat assessment and coordinated response. Sarah's positioning allowed her to engage 2 hostile targets while simultaneously identifying and protecting a civilian hostage who had been concealed behind an overturned table. Her performance during this engagement was flawless, showcasing the hours of training and natural ability that had brought her to this point. However, the exercise was being closely monitored by Commander Mitchell, who was observing from a concealed position that allowed him to evaluate each candidate's performance without interfering with the training scenario. The team's success on the second floor earned them praise from observing instructors and boosted their confidence as they prepared to tackle their final objective. The third floor, which intelligence reports indicated contained the most heavily defended areas of the building. This floor was expected to present the greatest challenges, with multiple hostile forces, complex layouts, and additional civilian hostages who required immediate rescue. As Team Alpha prepared for their assault on the third floor, they received updated intelligence indicating that hostile forces had been alerted to their presence and were preparing defensive positions. This development required immediate tactical adjustments and increased the level of danger for the entire operation. The team would need to balance speed and aggression with caution and precision to achieve their objectives without casualties. The stairwell leading to the third floor had been rigged with additional obstacles and potential ambush positions, forcing the team to modify their approach and employ alternative tactics. Sarah's input proved valuable during the planning phase, as she identified a potential weakness in the hostile defensive setup that could be exploited to gain tactical advantage. Her suggestion involved using the building's ventilation system to bypass the heavily defended stairwell and gain access to the third floor from an unexpected direction. While the approach was more technically challenging and required precise coordination, it offered the potential for achieving complete surprise and avoiding the obvious kill zones that hostile forces had established. Rodriguez evaluated Sarah's proposal carefully, considering both the potential advantages and the inherent risks of such an unconventional approach. After consulting with other team members and weighing their options, he decided to implement a modified version of her plan that would allow them to maintain their tactical advantage while minimizing exposure to unnecessary dangers. The execution of this modified plan required exceptional teamwork and trust among all team members. Sarah's role involved serving as the advanced scout through the ventilation system, gathering intelligence on hostile positions and civilian hostage locations before the rest of the team followed. This was an enormous responsibility that placed her in a position of both tactical importance and personal danger. As Sarah carefully maneuvered through the narrow ventilation ducts, she demonstrated the physical conditioning and mental toughness that had sustained her throughout the training program. The confined space was claustrophobic and uncomfortable, requiring her to move slowly and deliberately while maintaining constant communication with her teammates below. From her elevated position, Sarah was able to observe the layout of the third floor and identify the positions of both hostile forces and civilian hostages. Her intelligence gathering revealed that the defensive setup was even more sophisticated than initially anticipated, with overlapping fields of fire and multiple backup positions that would make a conventional assault extremely difficult and dangerous. The information Sarah provided allowed her team to develop a comprehensive tactical plan that exploited weaknesses in the hostile defensive arrangement while protecting civilian hostages from crossfire. Her contribution to the planning process demonstrated not only her tactical acumen, but also her value as a trusted team member whose input was respected and valued by her colleagues. However, as the team prepared to execute their assault on the third floor, Commander Mitchell made an unexpected decision that would dramatically alter the course of the exercise and test Sarah's character in ways she had never anticipated. Unknown to the candidates, the commander had been growing increasingly concerned about what he perceived as preferential treatment being given to Sarah by her teammates and some instructors. In his view, the modifications to tactical plans based on Sarah's suggestions represented a dangerous precedent that could compromise mission effectiveness in real-world situations. He was particularly concerned that male team members might be subconsciously adjusting their tactics to accommodate perceived limitations or vulnerabilities, rather than treating her as a completely equal participant in the operation. Commander Mitchell's decision to intervene directly in the exercise was motivated by what he believed was a genuine concern for maintaining standards and ensuring that all candidates were truly prepared for the realities of special operations work. However, his approach would prove to be both controversial and personally devastating for Sarah, setting the stage for a confrontation that would define both of their careers. As Team Alpha positioned themselves for their final assault, Commander Mitchell activated his communication system and issued new orders that would fundamentally change the nature of the exercise. His intervention was about to transform a routine training evolution into a personal test that would challenge everything Sarah had worked to achieve throughout her military career. The tension in the third-floor corridor was palpable as Team Alpha prepared for their final assault. Sarah had successfully completed her reconnaissance mission through the ventilation system and rejoined her team with valuable intelligence that would guide their approach. The layout she had observed was more complex than anticipated, with hostile forces positioned strategically to defend multiple approaches while keeping civilian hostages in vulnerable positions. Rodriguez was in the middle of briefing the team on their modified tactical plan when Commander Mitchell's voice crackled through their communication systems. His tone was sharp and commanding, cutting through their preparations with an authority that demanded immediate attention from every team member. Team Alpha, this is command. Halt your current operation immediately and await new instructions. Mitchell's voice carried an edge that suggested something significant had changed in the overall mission parameters. The team members exchanged glances, uncertainty replacing the confidence they had been building toward their assault. Rodriguez acknowledged the transmission and waited for additional guidance, while Sarah felt a growing sense of unease about the unexpected interruption. In all their previous training exercises, mid-mission changes were rare and usually indicated either a safety concern or a major tactical development. Team Alpha, you have a new primary objective, Mitchell continued after a brief pause. Intelligence indicates that one of your team members may be compromised and could potentially jeopardize the mission. You are to conduct an immediate security assessment of all team members before proceeding with any further tactical operations. The words hung in the air like a physical presence, creating an immediate atmosphere of suspicion and confusion among team members who had spent months building trust and mutual respect. Rodriguez's expression reflected his bewilderment at this unexpected development, as he struggled to understand what could have triggered such a dramatic shift in mission parameters. Sir, can you provide additional details about the nature of this potential compromise? Rodriguez requested through his microphone, his professional training competing with his protective instincts toward his team members. Negative, team leader. Conduct your assessment immediately and report your findings. This is a direct order from command authority. Mitchell's response carried the weight of absolute military authority, leaving no room for further questions or delays. The implications of this new directive created an immediate crisis of trust within the team. Each member found themselves looking at their colleagues with newfound suspicion, wondering who might be the source of the alleged security concern. The bonds they had forged through shared hardship and mutual dependence were suddenly strained by the possibility that one among them was not what they seemed. Sarah felt the weight of suspicious glances falling upon her more heavily than the others, as she was the most obvious candidate for scrutiny given her unique position within the traditionally male domain of special operations. The timing of this security assessment, coming immediately after her successful reconnaissance mission, seemed particularly cruel and calculated to undermine her credibility at the moment of her greatest triumph. Rodriguez struggled with the impossible position he had been placed in by these new orders. His training and military discipline demanded absolute obedience to superior officers, but his personal experience with each team member had given him complete confidence in their loyalty and competence. The suggestion that any of his people might be compromised felt like a personal betrayal of everything they had accomplished together. Team, we need to conduct individual interviews as directed by command, Rodriguez announced with obvious reluctance. I want everyone to understand that this is a procedural requirement and does not reflect any doubt in my mind about your integrity or commitment to this mission. The interview process was conducted in a small adjacent room that had been designated as a temporary command post for the exercise. Rodriguez questioned each team member individually, asking about their backgrounds, their motivations for joining the SEAL program, and any concerns they might have about their teammates' performance or reliability. Chun, Thompson, Williams, and Jackson all completed their interviews quickly and efficiently, providing straightforward answers to Rodriguez's questions while expressing their complete confidence in every member of their team. Each specifically mentioned Sarah's contributions to their success and their trust in her abilities and dedication. When Sarah's turn came for questioning, she entered the room with the same confidence and composure that had characterized her performance throughout the training program. However, she was immediately struck by the formal and somewhat cold atmosphere that Rodriguez seemed forced to maintain, a stark contrast to the warm camaraderie they had previously shared. Martinez, I need you to understand that these questions are required by command authority and do not reflect any personal doubts about your performance or character, Rodriguez began, his discomfort with the situation evident in his voice and body language. I understand completely, team leader. Please proceed with whatever questions you need to ask. Sarah responded with professional courtesy, while internally bracing herself for what she suspected might be a challenging interrogation. Rodriguez's questions initially focused on standard background verification, asking about her family history, her motivations for military service, and her goals within the special operations community. Sarah answered each question honestly and thoroughly, providing details about her upbringing, her academic and athletic achievements, and her unwavering commitment to serving her country in the most demanding role possible. However, as the questioning continued, Rodriguez seemed to receive additional instructions through his earpiece that changed both his demeanor and the nature of his inquiries. His questions became more pointed and challenging, focusing specifically on her relationships with other team members and her methods for gathering intelligence during the reconnaissance mission. Martinez, some concerns have been raised about potential security violations during your intelligence gathering phase. Can you provide a detailed account of every action you took while in the ventilation system? Rodriguez asked, his voice taking on a more formal and investigative tone. Sarah was taken aback by the implication that her successful mission might somehow be viewed as suspicious or problematic. She had followed all established protocols, maintained constant communication with her team, and provided valuable intelligence that directly contributed to their mission planning. The suggestion that any of this constituted a security violation was both baffling and deeply insulting. Team leader, I followed all established procedures during my reconnaissance mission. I maintained communication protocols, gathered intelligence on hostile positions and civilian hostage locations, and reported my findings accurately to the team. I'm not aware of any security violations that may have occurred. Sarah responded with growing frustration at the apparent injustice of the situation. Command authority has indicated that your extended time in the ventilation system and your detailed knowledge of hostile defensive positions raise questions about how you obtained such comprehensive information, Rodriguez continued, clearly uncomfortable with the direction his questioning was taking. The implication was clear and devastating. Sarah was being accused of somehow collaborating with hostile forces or obtaining intelligence through improper means. The accusation struck at the very heart of everything she had worked to achieve and represented a fundamental attack on her integrity and loyalty to her country and her teammates. Sir, I obtained all information through direct observation from my position in the ventilation system, exactly as briefed and planned by our team. Any suggestion that I obtained intelligence through improper means is completely false and unsupported by facts. Sarah's response carried both professional composure and barely controlled anger at the unjust accusations being leveled against her. At this point, Commander Mitchell's voice again crackled through the communication system, but this time his message was directed specifically at Sarah rather than the entire team. His words would forever change the trajectory of both their careers and their personal understanding of military justice and leadership. Candidate Martinez, report to the training floor immediately for direct evaluation by command authority. Your team will continue their mission without you pending resolution of security concerns. Mitchell's voice carried in tone of absolute authority that brooked no discussion or delay. Sarah felt the bottom drop out of her world as she realized that months of dedication, sacrifice, and achievement were being swept away by unfounded accusations and arbitrary command decisions. The injustice of the situation was overwhelming, but her military training and personal discipline prevented her from expressing her emotional turmoil in front of her teammates. Yes, sir. Reporting as ordered. Sarah responded with mechanical precision while internally struggling to process the implications of this devastating turn of events. As she prepared to leave the room and face whatever confrontation awaited her on the training floor, Rodriguez placed a supportive hand on her shoulder and spoke quietly so that his words would not be picked up by the monitoring equipment. Martinez, I want you to know that every member of this team has complete confidence in your integrity and your value as a teammate. Whatever is happening here does not change our respect for you or our belief in your capabilities. His words provided some comfort, but could not diminish the magnitude of the challenge she was about to face. Sarah walked through the corridors of the training facility with her head held high, drawing upon every source of inner strength she had developed throughout her life. The unfairness of the situation was obvious, but she was determined to face whatever accusations or challenges awaited her with the same courage and dignity that had brought her this far. The training floor was largely empty when she arrived, with most candidates and instructors focused on ongoing exercises in other parts of the facility. Commander Mitchell stood alone in the center of the space, his posture rigid and his expression stern as he watched her approach. The lighting cast harsh shadows that emphasized the gravity of the moment, and the isolation Sarah felt as she prepared to defend her honor and her career. Candidate Martinez, you have been removed from your team due to security concerns and questions about your methods and motivations. Mitchell began without preamble, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. Your performance during this exercise has raised serious doubts about your suitability for special operations work. Sarah listened to these accusations with growing disbelief and anger, recognizing them as unfounded attacks on her character and competence. Everything she had worked for throughout her life was being undermined by baseless suspicions and what appeared to be personal prejudice disguised as professional concern. Sir, I respectfully request specific details about these alleged security concerns. My performance has been consistently excellent throughout this training program, and I have never violated any protocols or procedures. Sarah responded with controlled professionalism while internally preparing for what she suspected would be a defining confrontation. Mitchell's response would escalate the situation far beyond anything either of them could have anticipated, setting the stage for a physical confrontation that would reveal the true character of both participants and forever change their respective careers in the military. Commander Mitchell's face showed no emotion as he studied Sarah standing before him on the training floor. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken tension and the weight of everything that had led to this moment. Sarah could feel her heart pounding, but her external composure remained steady, a testament to the months of grueling training that had prepared her for high-stress situations. Candidate Martinez, your attitude and responses demonstrate exactly why women don't belong in special operations. Mitchell finally spoke, his voice cold and calculated. You lack the fundamental understanding of hierarchy and discipline that is essential for this work. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow, not because they carried any truth, but because they revealed the prejudice that had been lurking beneath the surface of Mitchell's professional facade. After months of proving herself through objective performance metrics, she was being judged not on her abilities, but on her gender. The unfairness of it ignited a fire of righteous anger that she struggled to contain. "Sir, my performance speaks for itself. I have met or exceeded every standard set for this program," Sarah replied, her voice steady despite the emotional turmoil churning within her. "I request that any evaluation of my suitability be based on objective criteria rather than personal opinions." Mitchell's expression hardened at what he perceived as insubordination. In his mind, Sarah's composed response and refusal to be intimidated only confirmed his belief that women lack the proper respect for military authority. He had expected her to break down under pressure, providing him with the justification he needed to remove her from the program. "Your very presence here is a compromise of our standards," Mitchell continued, stepping closer to Sarah in an obvious attempt to use his physical presence to intimidate her. "You've been coddled and given special treatment throughout this program, and now you think you can question my assessment of your abilities." Sarah felt the commander's words like poison, designed to undermine her confidence and make her doubt everything she had accomplished. But years of facing skeptics and overcoming obstacles had prepared her for this moment. She understood that Mitchell was trying to provoke an emotional response that would justify his predetermined conclusion about her unsuitability for special operations. "Sir, I have never requested or received special treatment. Every achievement in this program has been earned through the same standards applied to all candidates," Sarah responded with unwavering conviction. "I stand on my record and the objective assessment of my performance by qualified instructors." The standoff continued for several more minutes, with Mitchell circling Sarah like a predator, hurling increasingly personal and inappropriate comments about her capabilities, her motivations, and her place in the military hierarchy. Each verbal assault was designed to break her spirit and force her to respond emotionally, providing him with grounds for immediate dismissal from the program. However, Sarah's response was not what Mitchell expected or wanted. Instead of crumbling under his verbal barrage, she maintained her composure and dignity, answering each accusation with facts and professional restraint. Her refusal to be broken by his psychological warfare only seemed to increase his frustration and anger. "I'm a Navy SEAL," Mitchell suddenly shouted, his voice echoing across the empty training floor. The words carried the weight of his identity and authority, delivered with the intention of reminding Sarah of the vast gulf between their respective positions in the military hierarchy. In that moment of explosive emotion, Mitchell made a decision that would define both of their careers forever. Driven by frustration at his inability to break Sarah's spirit through verbal intimidation, he stepped forward and delivered a sharp, open-handed strike across her face, the sound echoing through the training facility like a gunshot. The physical assault was so unexpected and inappropriate that Sarah was momentarily stunned, more by the complete abandonment of military professionalism than by any physical pain. She stood motionless for perhaps 2 seconds, processing what had just occurred and the implications of a superior officer striking a subordinate during a training exercise. Mitchell seemed immediately to realize the magnitude of his mistake. The satisfied expression that had briefly crossed his face when he struck her was quickly replaced by uncertainty as he recognized that he had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. Military regulations were absolutely clear about the prohibition against striking subordinates, regardless of the circumstances or justifications. For Sarah, those 2 seconds of stunned silence were followed by a moment of perfect clarity about both her situation and her response. Everything she had endured throughout her life had prepared her for this instant. Every challenge overcome, every obstacle surmounted, every skeptic proven wrong had built toward this defining moment. What happened next would be discussed in military circles for years to come, analyzed by leadership instructors, and cited as an example of both courage under pressure and the proper response to abuse of authority. Sarah's reaction demonstrated not only her physical capabilities, but also her understanding of military law and her commitment to justice over personal advancement. Sarah's response was swift, precise, and completely within her rights under military regulations governing self-defense and response to unlawful orders. Using techniques she had mastered through years of martial arts training and months of special operations preparation, she executed a perfect defensive maneuver that neutralized Mitchell's aggressive posture while demonstrating her complete technical superiority. The takedown was textbook perfect, a combination of leverage, timing, and applied force that left Mitchell on the ground in a controlled submission hold before he could fully process what was happening. Sarah's movements were so smooth and professional that any observer would have recognized them as the actions of a highly trained operator responding appropriately to a threat. Mitchell found himself immobilized on the training floor, his arms secured in a submission hold that prevented any movement while causing no permanent injury. The reversal of their positions was so complete and so sudden that he was initially unable to comprehend how a candidate he had been berating moments earlier had gained such complete control of the situation. "Sir, I am responding to your unprovoked assault in accordance with military regulations regarding self-defense," Sarah said calmly, while maintaining her hold. Her voice carried no emotion, no satisfaction, no anger, only the professional confidence of someone who had acted correctly under extreme provocation. The sound of approaching footsteps indicated that the commotion had attracted attention from other personnel in the facility. Within moments, several instructors and senior staff members had arrived to witness the unprecedented scene of a candidate restraining a commanding officer on the training floor. Master Chief Peterson, the senior enlisted advisor for the training facility, was the first to fully assess the situation and take control. His years of experience had exposed him to virtually every type of training incident imaginable, but nothing had prepared him for the sight of Commander Mitchell being professionally restrained by a candidate he had been evaluating. "What happened here?" Peterson demanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to managing complex and dangerous situations involving highly trained personnel. Sarah maintained her position while answering clearly and concisely. "Master Chief, Commander Mitchell struck me during our evaluation meeting. I responded with appropriate defensive measures to protect myself from further assault. The commander is secured but uninjured." Peterson's expression revealed his understanding of the serious implications of Sarah's statement. An allegation of assault by a superior officer was among the most serious charges that could be leveled within the military justice system, with career-ending consequences for any officer found guilty of such conduct. "Release the commander immediately, Candidate Martinez," Peterson ordered while simultaneously signaling for other personnel to secure the area and ensure that Mitchell received any necessary medical attention. Sarah complied instantly, releasing her hold and stepping back to a position of attention while Mitchell slowly got to his feet. The contrast between their respective demeanors was striking. Sarah maintained perfect military bearing, while Mitchell appeared disheveled and uncertain, his authority undermined by both his inappropriate actions and their consequences. "Commander Mitchell, are you injured, and do you require medical attention?" Peterson asked with professional concern while carefully observing both participants for signs of escalation or ongoing confrontation. "No, Master Chief, I do not require medical attention," Mitchell replied stiffly, his voice carrying the weight of someone who understood that his career had just taken a devastating turn. The presence of witnesses and the clear evidence of his inappropriate behavior left him with no viable options for damage control or alternative explanations. Peterson quickly established control of the situation, separating the participants and initiating the formal procedures required for investigating allegations of assault and abuse of authority. Sarah was escorted to a separate area where she would be interviewed by investigators, while Mitchell was similarly isolated pending a full investigation of the incident. The investigation that followed would be thorough and comprehensive, involving interviews with all personnel who had interacted with either participant during the training cycle. The evidence would ultimately support Sarah's account completely, revealing a pattern of inappropriate behavior and bias that had culminated in the assault. For Sarah, the vindication would come too late to salvage her current training cycle, but it would establish important precedents for the treatment of women in special operations programs. Her professional response to an impossible situation would become a case study in military academies and leadership schools. The consequences for Commander Mitchell would be swift and severe. Court-martial proceedings would result in his removal from command, reduction in rank, and eventual discharge from military service. His career, built over decades of service, would end in disgrace due to a moment of poor judgment and revealed prejudice. Sarah's journey to becoming a Navy SEAL would resume in a subsequent training cycle, where she would be evaluated by officers who understood that her previous experience had demonstrated not weakness, but exceptional strength of character. She would ultimately earn her trident and serve with distinction in multiple deployments. The incident would be remembered not as a moment of conflict between individuals, but as a turning point in the integration of women into special operations forces. Sarah's composure under extreme provocation and her professional response to assault would inspire countless others who faced similar challenges in their own careers. Years later, as Sarah advanced through the ranks and eventually commanded her own teams, she would use her experience to mentor others facing discrimination and abuse. Her story would become part of military history, cited as an example of how courage, competence, and character could overcome even the most entrenched prejudices. The 5 seconds between Mitchell's assault and Sarah's response had changed both of their lives forever, but more importantly, it had changed the trajectory of women's participation in elite military units. What began as an attempt to humiliate and defeat had become a moment of triumph that would inspire future generations of warriors. Sarah Martinez had not only survived her ultimate test, but had passed it with a grace and professionalism that elevated her above those who sought to tear her down. In defending herself, she had defended the principle that merit, not gender, should determine who serves in the most demanding roles our military has to offer.